Well, we're joined now by Jennie Bond, royal commentator and broadcaster. Jennie, this story is now sort of maturing into its third day of scandal. Omid Scobie saying, I didn't send the names. The translator saying, well, the manuscript I got to translate had them in it. Meanwhile, it seems to me Charles is over at COP28, I think it is now, and William and Kate at the Royal Variety Performance, and they're just letting it wash over them. Do you think this has had a negative impact on them?
Well, I think it's hurtful and I think it's painful for them to have this all resurrected. I think it's rather sad that with all that's going on, not only at COP28, but obviously in Gaza, that here we are sitting talking about an alleged conversation which apparently took place 5 years ago, and about which there's been very little mention since by Meghan or Harry. And now these names are out in the open. I have some sympathy with Piers Morgan. I think the allegations were sort of besmirching the whole of the royal family. But what has really struck me this morning in covering this story and listening to the output of several television and radio stations is the number of people who've called in, people from biracial families who have said, well, of course we talked about what our unborn baby was going to be like. Was it going to be like mum, like dad, tall, short? What was the skin colour going to be? I mean, that is a conversation that normal human curiosity provokes. So I think that it isn't a race row at all. It's, I don't know what it is. It's a storm in a teacup, I think.
Well, it's to do with the nuances, really, Jennie, because it depends how you frame the situation.
Yeah,
some have framed it
yes.
in this way. They expressed concern over the darkness of the skin of the baby. Others say...
Well, did they?
Concern. Well, no, this is how it's been framed, that they expressed concern over the potential colour of the baby. Or is it just, as you say, they just chatted about it? I suspect, well, I don't suspect, I pretty much know it's the latter. And yet they're embroiled in this storm. And so you have to say, well, whose fault is this? Most fingers are pointing to Omid Scobie. Does he owe the royal family an apology?
I think he probably does, yes, because however these names have come out, I don't honestly see how it can possibly be a mistranslation. It has raised the whole thing again. But if he somehow has got his hands on private letters between the king and Meghan, which he claims to have done, and if in those private letters Charles did indeed say that whoever made these remarks, there was no casual prejudice and no ill will intended, if that is all true, well then, end of story. People do sometimes say things that are taken the wrong way. People sometimes are a little clumsy in their speech. Clearly, he is saying there was no malice intended, and as far as I'm concerned, that draws a line under it.
Yeah, I mean, do you think in that regard this is, in fact, the end game of this whole sorry, tawdry conversation? Because it's sort of reached a peak now where most of the public are fed up with hearing about it, don't believe it. They all want the royal family to move on. I'm pretty sure William and Kate and Charles want the family to move on. And I can't see that Meghan and Harry particularly have much road left in profiting, so to speak, from this sort of grumble that they've been having incessantly. Do you think we might finally reach a point that we do actually move on?
Oh, I don't know. Honestly, we always think we're moving on, don't we? You know, only last month, Harry called his dad on his 75th birthday, and we thought, well, there we go. It's beginning to thaw, and now we've gone a whole mile backwards again. It just seems to be going on and on, stoked by all sorts of people, including Omid Scobie. I've been surprised that the palace have not just remained silent. They have said that they are considering all options, and that's unusual because I think thus far their stance on simply carrying on with their work, focusing on their work and saying nothing has been the correct strategy. And I wonder if William, who I think is seething about this, perhaps might be the driving force behind any consideration of legal or other action.
The thing is, Jennie, as you well know, I mean, the royal family are very used to, shall we say, incendiary books, articles, television reports coming out all over the world, you know, with monotonous regularity. They're used to it. But there seems to be a consensus that this book, Endgame, by Omid Scobie, has crossed the line. that it's poisonous, that it's spiteful, that it depicts everyone in the royal family as absolutely awful, apart from the saintly Harry and Meghan. So I think the onus now, a lot of people feel, I don't think the onus is on the palace to say anything in particular, to continue their usual refrain, which is, you know, never explain, never complain. But something that might help to diffuse this, frankly, escalating tension. It's getting worse by the day. I mean, you hope it's the end game, but the end game. See what I said there? But it's just not. You can see the papers now. You look at all the media outlets all over the world. They're all talking about it. So one way to diffuse the situation, Jenny, I would suggest would be for Harry and Meghan to stick their head above the parapet and say, we denounce this book. As we said, we had nothing to do with it. We denounce it. Therefore, that would, I think, bring some peace and harmony. And if they don't denounce it, by extension, the problem is, it seems, since they have some kind of relationship with Omid Scobie, they endorse it. That is a problem. So a few words from Harry and Meghan would go a long way, don't you think?
I do think, yes, I think it would be very helpful if they do that. I suspect that Harry is squirming a little bit, actually, after, you know, making that call to his dad, and now this has happened. And if indeed they had absolutely nothing to do with this book, I completely agree with you. It'd be very dignified and helpful, and maybe some way towards reconciliation. No, not with William. I don't think that's going to happen. But if he had nothing to do with it and Meghan had nothing to do with it, well, yes, they should say so. But how on earth did these letters, if they're right, get into the public domain, or at least get into Scobie's hands? That is a mystery. Yeah, amongst many mysteries.
That's why it's not going away, because it gets murkier by the day. But thank you so much, Jenny. Great to talk.